What's going on, wrestling fans? Jeff Upson, and I'm alongside a new co-host, Dustin Hockensmith, because Eric bailed on me. Eric's out gallivanting in Las Vegas, so we've got the lovely Dustin Hockensmith from out of the Harrisburg area, Penn Live, Patriot News. Dustin, you were at the state capitol today. We're going to talk a lot about that, but first of all, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a while.
It's good to see you in this capacity. We talk a lot just about wrestling and everything else, and this is the first time I've subbed in for somebody, and I have more hair than the person that I subbed in for. So I'm really excited about that.
I mean, you're no Eric, but you do have more hair than Eric, so that is we're already off to a good start, right? I mean,
that's about the only check mark in the right column, but
okay.
we'll have a good time.
We're gonna have a blast, and today was a big day. Dustin was able to travel out to the Capitol building, and we had a really big day out there in the growth of women's sport in wrestling in Pennsylvania, and it's something that we've been talking about for a while, but today was kind of on the forefront of that discussion. And we saw some real heavy hitters coming in. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to have Leah Wright on. This is the second time Leah Wright's been invited on to the show. So, and last time I kind of scolded her for being from Cumberland Valley, and she reminded me that she didn't graduate from Cumberland Valley, but she's now involved in Cumberland Valley. So, I'll give her a pass on that, Dustin. But you're a West Shore guy too. So, yeah, I don't know about you folks, Dustin.
Well, my daughter goes to Cumberland Valley School District too. So same situation. Didn't graduate from there. I graduated from the Pennsylvania powerhouse Susquehanna High School.
That's right.
Home of Dalton Group.
Yep.
But now we go there. And I was just talking to her today, and I'll bring it back up on the air, is that, you can see the tide turning a little bit when it comes to youth girls wrestling. My daughter bringing home flyers about wrestling from her school that I assume Leah has something to do with.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's really cool because you get to see it firsthand, kind of what's going on with your daughter being involved in the Cumberland Valley School District. So today was I don't even know how to title today. Today was almost like commensurating these female wrestlers that were able to win state championships, but they were also being recognized in front of the state legislator to say, hey, we need to get this thing going. We need to get this sport sanctioned in Pennsylvania. It was almost like a large call to action. And it all started with state senator out of Lancaster, and that's Scott Martin. Scott Martin, for those of you who don't know, in 1990, Scott was a state champion for Lancaster Catholic at heavyweight. I believe he went undefeated that year. If my memory serves me correctly, he was undefeated en route to a state title. Very involved in wrestling and football throughout his youth and college days. And I actually believe he got a few calls to the pros, but nothing ever panned out. So he went into politics, where he's been doing a great job, and he's kind of been on the forefront of a lot of the movements with sanctioned PA wrestling. And it's really great to see him kind of orchestrate and bring together so many stakeholders into one spot. You had State Rep Ann Flood, who was also there today. You had folks like Bruce Baumgarter there, who is an absolute legend outside of every aspect of wrestling. It doesn't matter where he goes, he's recognized as kind of, at one time, the face of USA Wrestling. And Dustin, you got to walk up the steps of the state capitol beside him. Did he tower over you, and did you ever feel like, man, this guy could still put a whooping on me right now?
Listen, there have been some times in my life where I've felt absolutely pathetic. This is high on the list. Number one, because this gentleman still looks like he's got it. Like, it still looks like he could go, maybe not win gold in a world title match or anything, but I think he could still wrestle at a high level. He's got either a titanium hip or a titanium knee. I'm not sure which. I heard him telling security that. And we're walking side by side. I just kind of found myself next to him. What happened was, we went down to like the press conference area. I asked a question, which you made fun of my nasally voice. It was behind a mask, in my defense. And so it broke, and we all kind of migrated upstairs to go out to the House of Representatives, to go out in the stands there. I was introduced to him. I found myself walking side by side the entire way through. And he was anxious to address the question that I asked Senator Scott Martin. So we talked about that. just about the path forward. Obviously a big thing right now, and I was curious coming into today, what does the political realm, what can they do to generate more momentum? What does it mean to make some kind of symbolic gesture, like kind of like to what today was? How much value does that bring? So he and I talked about it. He had a really level perspective, good perspective when it comes to wrestling, as well as the administrative side and understanding where the PIAA is and their decision making and all that. But, and this is where I felt pathetic, we're walking up the steps, and it's not even that many steps, and I'm starting to breathe a little heavier. And Bruce Baumgartner with his Titanic or whatever was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to hold in the sweat and get my lungs to cooperate. And this dude's just cool as a cucumber.
Yeah.
But it was a surreal moment for me to walk. I knew he was going to be there. I did not imagine being face to face with him for a 5-minute walk, but it was really insightful to hear what he had to say about all this.
Yeah, and like you kind of mentioned, is he has his hat in a couple different things. Obviously, the competition end, coaching end, but also the administrative end with being at Edinburgh, now being involved in USA Wrestling, where he kind of I mean, I'll say the grunts on the ground, right? Don't necessarily see all the things that happen behind closed doors, all the legal, administrative, all these different things that happen. To actually bring these things into existence, that I don't think the layperson can truly comprehend until you sit down and you talk to somebody and they go through everything that needs to be done. So he has such a great perspective on that. And Dustin, you asked the question is, what is the relevance of today? Let me ask you this. What was it like for you just being there? What was the atmosphere like, the environment like? You got to see all the ladies behind the speakers there, and Montana DeLauder got to speak there. You had Rep. Ann Flood there. What was the atmosphere like for you, and how did you feel in the air that it was like?
Well, first of all, this was a very big deal for the girls. This group, and I wrote an article today for Penn Live just about the experience today as well. This group has not only accomplished a lot on the mat, but I think they are carrying this movement in plain view. And so I thought just the importance of having these 10 girls get recognized for that. And then I think in terms of the movement itself, just to have these girls in front of a different audience and be able to speak to, people who can affect change at a broad level and help them understand where they're coming from as athletes and why this cause is so important to them. I went into today I wasn't really understanding how big it was going to be. What is the magnitude of this? And sometimes I go in, not cynical necessarily, but just curious what kind of political gesture this was. And this was not a hollow political gesture by Scott Martin or Ann Flood. Both of them have wrestling in their backgrounds. Mm-hmm. Ann Flood from Northampton. You mentioned, you knew of her son who had wrestled. And Scott Martin, obviously with his background, he too looks like he could wrestle heavyweight right now if he wanted to. So there is substance behind the words that they're using, the gestures that they're making. They work pretty hard to get these girls in both the Senate and the House of Representatives to be recognized by both. And it was a really cool thing to have, up in the stands, up above the lawmakers in the House, for the lawmakers to stand up, turn around, and give them sort of a standing ovation and recognize them. I think given all the circumstances and what these girls accomplished, I thought it was a really well-deserved thing for them. And I think in terms of the movement itself, I mean, this is a really important thing. Being visible and making the sport as mainstream as you can possibly make it is a big part of the battle right now. And something like this, it was a meaningful step for them to be able to take it to a new audience.
And the one thing that you had mentioned that I really kind of attached myself to was hearing Ann Flood and her talking about her experiences in wrestling, because she had so much perspective and substance to what she was saying. And Ann Flood, for those of you who don't know, she's newly elected, I believe, state rep out of Northampton, the Lehigh area. And her son, Jacob Flood, who I believe graduated a couple years ago, maybe in 2019-ish. And he was just not a superstar guy, but I can remember seeing him wrestle against some tough kids from Becca, Nazareth, and she kind of talked about not only having a son in wrestling, but her experiences in wrestling, growing up with a father and brother who were involved in wrestling, her being on the mat, her wanting to compete. And it was almost like a stigma, right? A girl's not gonna compete. Like, get off the mat, and she ended up staying involved in wrestling, but never got the chance to actually compete in it, although she would have liked to. So just hearing her say that, and it was almost like turning around and looking at the ladies behind her and saying, I didn't have this opportunity. Not only should you be thankful for what you have, but keep going forward. You have a lot of momentum, and we're going to do anything in our power to get you to do that. So when I looked at the quote press conference, that was probably one of the more meaningful things I heard of the day, was just hearing her experiences, because she was really relatable, if that makes sense, Dustin.
Oh yeah, and everybody can relate to a wrestling mom who, you live it with passion, and you're sometimes more on edge as a mom than your
Yeah.
than your kid is. So I think, she obviously connects to the cause, and I thought it was interesting, like you said, that her mentioning, she wishes that she could have wrestled, but she had, I think it was her dad who said no, and you wish that, things had changed more over the past 30 plus years since then. She said that was in the 70s, and it doesn't sound all that different in certain parts of the state right now. And I think that's part of what all this is about, is being able to remove that stigma. And a big part of that is, there going to be parents until the end of time who aren't going to let their daughter wrestle boys.
Yeah.
And so that's part of this. And, she obviously connects to that mission. And, I think delivered a really good message. I thought Scott Martin did. I thought Montana DeLauder in that
Yeah.
setting with her no, I thought her message was outstanding. And a lot of people who were there had the same sentiment, that this isn't about winning championships or gold medals. It's about validating their competition. It's about competing and being able to be recognized at the same level as their male counterparts. But more often, it's about being able to learn and apply all the different lessons that wrestling teaches you. Again and again, you hear the same thing.
Yeah.
All the different things that make you a good person when it comes to discipline and hard work and being able to kind of grind situations out in life. That's what they're fighting to have access to, I think, more than anything else.
And you mentioned it with Montana DeLauder, and we've been so fortunate to have Montana on the girl scene for many years now, right? And another unique example of somebody who is arguably the best girls wrestler from the state of Pennsylvania, having over 80 wins against boy competition, which you heard Senator Scott Martin talk about. But Montana, not only does it on the mat, she does it off the mat. Her and Lily Scher are both heavily involved in the Sanctioned PA movement. Montana's been on the kind of, she was the poster, girl of Pennsylvania wrestling for many years now. And I'm sad we're losing her, right? I'm sad that we're not gonna, have Montana to see compete. But the difference is, she's shepherding that next generation, right? There's a lot of other very talented wrestlers from Pennsylvania coming up behind her. And, just like Val Baker did, and Val Baker, she was at the Pittsburgh Wrestling Classic when Montana won. And it was the first time in over 40 years where we had a girls match, and it wasn't considered an exhibition match. It counted towards the USA and Team PA score, which is amazing, right? And she was just continuing to break down barriers, and I can't wait to see where she goes in the future. But as you mentioned, she was able to deliver a great speech during the conference. But then you had mentioned to me, and this is where folks that weren't there weren't able to see, but you're rubbing shoulders with people, movers and shakers in the state of Pennsylvania, lawmakers, and she's able to talk about not only her experience in wrestling, but just her experience in life in general, and being a wrestler as a girl in Pennsylvania.
And I think she has come such a long way when it comes to, maturity and her ability to present herself in that way. She has been asked to do that for a long time. And one of the questions that I asked her and a few of the other girls is, at what point in your wrestling career did you start to accept and acknowledge and appreciate the fact that what you're doing is bigger than you? Montana DeLauder's ability to go out there and hang with boys and beat boys is such an important part of this movement because it validates that girls can wrestle. And a lot of people who are in the fringe areas here who don't really want to or haven't really acknowledged girls wrestling at all kind of need to see that.
Mhm.
And so I think she has carried around, I say a burden, but she's carried it so well, being the face of this type of movement. And I think maybe knowing that if you fail, it's a blow to the entire movement. Like, can you imagine being
Yeah.
16 or 17 walking around with that? And she has done an outstanding job of that the whole way through.
100%. And it's funny because I think Lily and Montana, and they're good friends, and Lily is kind of more like a firecracker, and Lily does the girl power stuff with us, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, because she was really the driving force behind us doing the state medalist shirts this year for the girls. But Lily just kind of, she's very outgoing, and she'll talk to anybody about it, and she's not afraid to share her mind. Montana, a little bit more quiet, a little bit more reserved, but man, when she spoke, it was just like, okay, it reminded me of like Kyle Snyder. Kyle Snyder, kind of quiet guy, kept to himself mostly, but when he spoke, and you're gonna listen, right? You're gonna listen up, and Montana, I thought, did that today, and I think she's only going to continue to do that as she moves forward to college and comes back to help the Sanction PA movement and Gettysburg, right? And Dustin, you've kind of been on the more of the front end than I have with this in Gettysburg, but with Chris Haynes and everything he's been able to do down there, it's not just Montana, right? There's all these other girls that are doing well and competing at a high level and getting something out of the sport, which is just incredible. I mean, we need to kind of clone Chris Haynes from across the state, and we need folks like him to go around and let people know how to do it.
That's 100% right. And I think the way that he's been able to make his wrestling room a really welcoming place, and be able to, I watched him run a practice that had 8 or 9 girls in it, including Montana, to treat all of them the same and give them the exact same coaching, the exact same attention, regardless of their skill level. It's a place where they feel welcome, like they feel like they're part of the team. They're not, it's not a coach who's grudgingly bringing kids in because they want the numbers or anything like that. This is a place that is very much on the front. And I know there are some outstanding places that are doing great things, and 10 schools that have started girls programs, but I have been really impressed. And it's bigger. It goes further than Montana. I think Montana helps recruit, helps make wrestling feel more mainstream in Gettysburg. But I think there's a culture in their room that it's going to be a meaningful experience. And I know, I showed up there. It was, late summer. I think it was last year. And there were girls who had gone out for other sports who had been cut from those sports. And Chris is going after them with passion, saying, you know what? You are not going to get cut from our team. If you want to come in and work, you're going to get something out of this. You're going to get better at this. And he's able to get numbers because of that, not because he wants numbers, but because I think he believes in the sport and the power of the sport and being able to apply it to more girls.
So you kind of bring up a good point about what he does to be inclusive, and the message that I heard today, and the message that I think I continue to hear is, we appreciate the PIAA at least telling us what we need to do to sanction girls wrestling in the state of Pennsylvania. However, 32 other states in our nation have already done it. And we look at boys wrestling in Pennsylvania, it's not even close, right? I mean, we are just a step above and ahead of everyone else, and that's just, there is no denying that. Now, when it comes to girls wrestling, why are we so behind? And it's the question I had after leaving this today was, okay, what do we do from here? What's the next step, and how do we keep this going? Because sure, it's nice, but we need to do more. Did you find an answer to that, Dustin, when you were there? Was it discussed, and really, what was your feelings on what the next step is?
That's a great question, and we are at sort of this time where the strategy is going to change. So Brooke Zumas, who you're familiar with from Parkland High School, the chairman of Sanction PA, she kind of mentioned that the campaign from them is going to shift from education and knowledge, and making sure that people understand the ins and the outs of this, to maybe something that, I don't know if I would use the word aggressive, but different tactics to try to get some programs that they believe are close to making a commitment to actually turning the corner. And then, there's a really good chance that momentum will work in their favor, and you get, say, one program, let's say from Lancaster County, could give way to three or four more once they see that one goes. And I think they spent a year, almost a year exactly, working really, really hard at this and getting 10 programs. And to me, I came into this thinking, okay, do the simple math here. You worked for a year, worked ridiculously hard at this, and you got 10. I think that's going to be the hardest 10. And there is a sentiment there within that movement itself that they are hopeful that they're not going to have to get to 100 before the PIAA meets them somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and that's always been my gripe. And Eric and I have talked about this on the show before, and my biggest complaint is, the PIAA it kind of, stuck in the 1960s or 70s whenever the bylaws were written. Why does it have to be 100? Like, what? Give me a scientific reason why once you say you hit 100, why is 100 a magic number? Well, that's because of the way it always is. I mean, I work in government. Okay, I work in local government. I can't tell you how many times I've asked my boss or somebody, why can't we do it? Well, we've never done it that way, kid. We've always done it this way. And I just want to strangle somebody. I'm like, well, we used to drive Model Ts, but we don't do that anymore. We used to do a lot of things, but that doesn't mean we should continue to do it. The movement is real, right? And today's day and age, today's society is very much, we've got to get it, and we've got to get it now. We're tired of waiting around. And I kind of feel that momentum from some of these girls. And it's almost like we don't need to sanction 100 schools to make this a popular thing. This is already popular. Look at the growth, even during a global pandemic. Let's keep it going. And I feel like it's the ball is in now the PIAA's court to say, maybe you should amend your bylaws. Look at emerging sports status, just like the NCAA has done with women's wrestling. Let's get on board here, because if not, you're gonna look bad, and folks are gonna come after you and attack you for that. And I think, this is kind of a subtle way of saying, hey, get your stuff together because we want this, and it needs to happen.
I think girls wrestling is so much different than talking about, lacrosse is a recent one that got approved and got sanctioned as a sport. Girls wrestling is so much different because that barrier to participation as it exists right now is significant. It's not significant to play lacrosse. You either do or you don't. It's significant in girls wrestling because the way that the sport exists now, you either commit to I'm just going to practice all the time and not compete, or you're going to say, I'm going to compete against boys. And that competition against boys is a humongous barrier to participation. That's what makes girls wrestling different than, I think, probably any other sport that you're looking to consider. So if any sport deserves an amendment to bylaws, I think girls wrestling is it. Not only that, I think every state, and there's 32 of them, 32 states, like we are now, Pennsylvania is now officially a minority in this. And I think when it comes to wrestling, it is fair to say Pennsylvania should never be in a minority on anything. They should be on the forefront of every single thing when it comes to development and growing the sport in any way. But the common thread in these other states was that somebody close to or on the board or in that organization said, forget the bylaws. We got to move forward with this. This is not a situation where it makes sense to say, once we get the numbers, then we'll move forward. Because all these states, once they move forward, saw exponential increases in their participation naturally. And not only that, that's just looking at the varsity level. How many girls are never getting started? Right. How many girls are being lost at the middle school level because the time is coming where they have to compete against boys now if they really want to participate in a sanctioned sport? So I think the trickle-down effect would be enormous in Pennsylvania once the green light is given, whenever that's given.
And I agree with you where the first 10 may have been the hardest, but at this rate, it's going to be 20 – I don't know. I'm not really good at math, but it's gonna be like 20, 30 something, when we actually get to 100, right? And I agree with you. The first 10 are probably the hardest. However, you are essentially saying sanction 100 states, like Pennsylvania within your state, you're going to have to sanction it 100 times with 100 different ADs, 100 different superintendents, 100 different school boards, et cetera, right? That is a tall task, right? That's a tall task. It's a big ask. However, I think there's ways around that. And, I just think in the end, like you said, wrestling is unique in that sense that, girls wrestling against girls is one thing, but girls wrestling against boys, you're just going to lose people. You're going to lose a lot of, and like you said, the trickle down effect. And the old adage, build it and they will come. Why are we not just building it already and seeing those numbers? I mean, that's just kind of, my opinion, but, I don't know. I would like to bring on Leah Wright to talk a little bit about this because she's kind of been on the forefront, not only for the Sanction PA movement, but also at the Cumberland Valley level. So we'll let her slide with the Cumberland Valley, the fact that she's involved in Cumberland Valley. Shout out Billy Chamberlain. Billy Chamberlain got hired as the head coach at Cumberland Valley. Billy and I think we graduated in the same year. He defeated my teammate in the state finals, Walter Peppelman, in a very boring, very, very boring match in ultimate tiebreaker. But, it broke my heart because, Walter and I were very close. And but shout out to Billy Chamberlain. He deserves it. Really good to have him. And it's good to have Leah Wright on. Leah, I was just talking about Cumberland Valley. We're going to let it go. Yeah. We're going to let that be bygones. How was today? You got to speak. I thought you were tremendous. What was that feeling like when you're there? It's almost like you're at the Super Bowl and you get that that press conference and here you are and you're talking about all the work and all the work to come. It's got to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thanks so much for having me on. It's nice seeing you again. And yes, we're really excited to have Billy as part of the CV family. And Dustin was there with us today doing some great coverage. But overall, the day was thrilling in so many ways. There was a lot of build up to the event and legwork that went into it, not just from the girls showing up, making sure they had all the information, but from the legislative side. And I would say the most exciting part about today was the girls on the stage behind us. And then I don't know if you got to see it, but at the section of the event where they were recognized by the Senate, was more than I could ever imagine. I used to work in state government and have been in that building many a times. And the energy is always exciting. But the fact that all of the girls, all 10 girls came today, and not only did the House recognize the accomplishments, but then every single senator of the girls gave these amazing personal shout outs to each of the girls on the state floor, had them each stand individually and recognize them. And I think it was at that point that the girls understood the levity of the situation. It was obviously exciting, but it's been a weird year for everybody, and especially for high school girls or high school as students and athletes. And this was some normalcy. And then to be recognized with their peers, I think was just thrilling for everyone involved.
How much was your daughter buzzing? Because if you watch that news conference situation, your 7-year-old is up there. She wrestles. She's interested in wrestling. She wants to kind of pursue what they pursue. And I asked several of the girls, you have the future of the sport standing next to you. How cool is that to kind of hopefully look at it 7 years down the road, be able to see this 7-year-old do things in the sport that you didn't have the opportunity to?
Yeah. So, I don't think she understands the levity of the situation either. She definitely appreciates it. And she has been lucky enough to get to know these amazing leaders like Lily and Montana and others. And these girls, the ones leading us right now, they have so much on their shoulders. We've, called them, amazing, trailblazers, lots of different things. And the reality is they shouldn't really have all that weight on their shoulders. We want to take a little bit away from them, but they do it so graciously. The day before the state championship that happened at Spooky Nook, there was a K through 8 event. and Lily was there, and Montana was there, and there were, you know, many, many other high school girls that were going to compete the next day, and they were on the mat cheering on and coaching this younger generation. And I had posted a picture of Paige with Montana and Lily the next day when we went back with their golden medals. And I said, I hope that Paige grows up to be like these young ladies, not because of their athletic achievements, but because of who they are individually. So it really is a phenomenal thing to see what these girls are doing. And yeah, Paige was over the moon and was clapping right along as they each got recognized.
So she was the one who Montana said is the future state champion on the stage there. That's who it was,
Yep.
right, Leah?
Yeah, talk about weight on your shoulders, right? Something to live to there.
Thanks a lot, Montana. And you know, you kind of said it. It's like they have, you know, whether that's they asked for this burden or not, they have it. And you know, I know in the beginning of the Sanction PA movement, you're like, we can shoulder some of that. And you know, I know Lily pretty well, and she's just like, nope, I'm good. I got it all. And you know, I know that tournament that she was at because she was video and interviewing Scott, you know, that day, and she was trying to get coverage. And I'm like, Lily, you could focus on your wrestling tomorrow. No, I got this. I'm good. And it's really great to see, you know, that kind of passion. And Leah, when you look at the overall message of today, and I think you said it. You said this is important. This is really important. Did that resonate with folks? Because we have a lot of course, excitement around it, but it needs to spread kind of outward. Did you feel like that was achieved here today?
Yeah, most definitely. I am so other legislators, in addition to Representative Flood and Senator Scott Martin, were part of the welcoming committee, if you will, who met us in the rotunda, made sure to say hello to the girls. We had some other senators and representatives on stage with us, and Senator Kristen Phillips Hill, I don't think any of you saw this, but from York, she had personally made these singlet sugar cookies and had each one tied in the color for each of the girls and then had them passed out. So I do think that people understand the need to elevate and amplify this message. And this is just one area in which we can make a difference. And I think that's what's important, is looking through the lens of what do we offer boys, and are we doing the same thing for girls? And that's where Senator Martin was influential on this. So he was one of the first to start tweeting when, you know, we launched Sanction PA, and in support. Obviously, he has a very strong wrestling history. You know, he's right in Lancaster. Spooky Nook was in his backyard, so he came out to the event. But he was the first to say, we can recognize the girls. We recognize the boys. We do this for every single other sport. Why aren't we doing this? And so that's what made today monumental, is looking through that lens of equity and making sure that we have the same opportunities. And Jeff, I'm going to call you out because you did something today through that same lens, where, you know, the guys, they get their shirts, their medal shirts, and 63 shirts are in the mail, right?
Yeah, absolutely they are. And you know, that is all Lily. Like Lily's, and of course, living through that lens of what I am, it's like you don't realize what the boys have that the girls don't. And Lily said to me, I can remember the day she texted me, she's like, you know, I dated Ed Scott and I was wearing his state champion shirt. I'm a state champion. Where's my shirt? And I'm like, ooh, Lily, you're right. And, you know, and then, you know, I put it off, and then she's like, Jeff, we state champion shirts and state medal shirts, we're doing that. I'm like, yes, Lily, we are. And we absolutely did. And our team at Blue Chip, I said, it's got to look cool. It's got to really pop. And, you know, we put the girl power logo in the middle because it's like, that's what it is. That's what we're harnessing. And Lily was such a strong advocate for that. It's actually, I'm so excited for it because it's the first time we're ever doing it. And it's like, hey, you don't have a quote PIAA medal, but you get the same shirt that every single PIAA boys state champion gets, and you get to wear it around with the same pride and passion as all the boys do. So it's just a T-shirt, but I feel like it's kind of symbolic of the movement overall, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's more than a t-shirt. It's definitely um, a symbol of moving towards equal opportunities. And I think what's important, and you said it, as far as the inequities aren't always intentional,
Right.
right? So if you're continuing to do something from year to year, you don't stop and evaluate, what the equal offerings are, then you might miss an opportunity to level the field, if you will. So again, this was a weird year, but as we're going into another wrestling season, I sit on a board. We're already talking about tournaments, right? So people that plan those tournaments, are they offering a girls division?
Right.
Or Dustin had mentioned that he saw a flyer for CV Wrestling, and it mentioned on there that girls are welcome, right? These are little things. So you say it's just a t-shirt, it's just a flyer, it's just another division at a tournament. And so these are all very important moves that we can make to make sure that we're giving those equal opportunities at all levels within wrestling.
Well, speaking of kind of what's next, give us a
Mm-hmm.
feel for what are the next steps? What is the next bit of strategy? It feels like there's another chapter coming to what's happening with Sanction PA and what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish. Have you guys kind of gotten together and talked about, we need to move forward with A, B, and C, or do you have kind of steps planned out for taking this movement maybe to another level?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dustin. So I think it's strategy wise, and as things normalize here, there's going to be a doubling down on support and resources that we give to schools that have been showing interest in starting programs at their school. My heart goes out to everybody that was involved in any school related decision this year. That's from parents to coaches, administrators. And I think that a gold star times 10 needs to go to the schools that made decisions within this year to start programs. And I think there was a lot of scrutiny of like, why didn't this school make the decision for a girl program? And, they were just trying to keep the doors open, get our kids in the classroom. So as far as strategy, we need to go back to those schools. We need to make sure they have all the information possible so that they can make decisions, so they can have votes, so that we have more girls programs in the fall. I think that's going to send a really strong message to the movement. I think PIAA, obviously the 100 school threshold is there. It's part of the bylaws currently, but this emerging school status, or sports status rather, is on the table. I think that would be important, and want to have conversations around that, because some of the hesitancy, I think, for schools is this really something that we're invested in as a state? And so the PIAA making that emerging school status and naming wrestling as a top emerging or schools sports status, and naming wrestling as an emerging sport, I think will give a lot of credibility to those administrators that are making that decision. We're also doubling down on resources as well. So we just had a Title IX webinar last week, a resource webinar about what it is. There's a lot of misinformation about what Title IX is, and that's obviously relevant within this space of talking about equity in sport. And so continuing to do that activity and those actions and finding more partners. So that is part of the strategy in the next 6 months.
If you can put COVID aside for a second, I know it's impossible to do, but put COVID aside for a second in the past year and all the impact that that has had on everybody within the realm of high school sports. How tough of a sell is it to a school board or whoever to try to green light the approval of a girls wrestling program when you don't really know what the future holds exactly. Like it seems hard to sell when you don't know, okay, what's next in this? When are, how much is the competition going to grow? It just seems like a lot of uncertainty then piled on top of the uncertainty of trying to navigate through COVID and all the scheduling and all that.
Sure. So I think that we have a lot of compelling data, statistics, and just case studies of the popularity of this sport and how quickly it grows. So that's one thing. The second thing is, although this is a new sport, it's got the infrastructure already built in within the state to be running this moment, right? So I believe that Senator Martin said today, it's not like starting a team sport where we need to make sure that we have a certain number of players on each team at the school, and then making sure that there's other teams that people can compete with. As an individualized sport, we have more flexibility on what that looks like. Obviously, you want more than one participant on the team, but it is plausible to say we're going to have a girls team and we're going to build it from zero. This year we have one, and there's lots of creative ways that the teams are being formed, and they look different from school to school. And it's really astonishing to see the solutions that schools are coming up with. So Gettysburg's program, for example, they have the same head coach for both the boys and girls, and they wrestle together. They have the same facilities. And if they're going to travel to competitions, they could travel together. Then Easton went a different approach and decided that they wanted two completely separate programs, different coaches. And so again, I think that it's a sell. I've believe that in my lifetime I've had harder sales in front of me. I think that there's a lot of compelling arguments, and we're only hitting the tip or the tip of the iceberg as far as the compelling arguments. There's the fact that wrestling is an extremely diverse sport, and the threshold for entry is really easy as far as it doesn't cost that much for a participant compared to a lot of other sports. And so making sure that you offer opportunities equally within your school, I think that the barrier for, if you just had the opportunity to sit down with the administrator, I think that they would be swayed fairly easily.
Kind of piggybacking off of what you just said about the administration portion of it, I was surprised to see Bruce Baumgartner there. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got a 4-time Olympian, 2-time, gold medalist at the Olympics, a guy who, I had a poster of him up in my room as a kid. I mean, he's a legend. And I'm thinking, man, I think it adds value, but Dustin brought it up. It's like, well, he has a couple hats he wears, and the administrative hat is kind of an important one. How critical was it having a guy like Bruce there who was, in that role as an administrator at Edinburgh, and has kind of worn a whole bunch of different hats when it comes to wrestling?
Yeah, so he certainly added a lot of credibility. Him and I talked on the side as well as far as understanding the administrator decision and prioritizing certain programs over others. He obviously wears a great hat when it comes to just in general being known in Pennsylvania. He's walking through the Capitol, and he knows a bunch of people not part of our group, and I don't even think it was wrestling related, right? So him being able to talk from the perspective of not only an administrator, but in general, like an educator, right? And understanding, offering opportunities, I think that was huge. I also think for him to be able to give like a historic perspective of where the sport was and where the sport is and where it needs to go is a phenomenal just kind of peek into a different perspective than anybody else has, right? And then also adding in things like the Olympic conversation and the fact that Helen, who we're all going to be, on the edge of our seat cheering for, she's training right now up at Nittany Lion Wrestling, right? So it also gave a lot of foundation for the importance of Pennsylvania as a leader in this sport, and how, frankly, we might be missing the boat a little bit here by not, putting our arms around this a little bit more.
It's so incredible that you said that, because when he kind of brought that up, it was like it was hard for him to even say that. He's like, wait a second, Helen, a gold medalist, is training in Pennsylvania, in a state they don't. Oh, okay, this is this is really important stuff, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, because it tied it all together, and you're like, okay, this is missing the boat. Yeah, with that boat, you don't want that boat to sail away too far, because everything that's going on in state college and just around the state in general, you're just seeing more and more. Lehigh Valley Wrestling Club, they've gotten a good growth in women's wrestling as well, and you're just seeing so much change happening. So you're like, all right, come on, let's move along. Well,
yeah, I was just going to say also, from just the collegiate level, we have 6 colleges in Pennsylvania now that offer women's wrestling. And the fact that we wouldn't want our own girls to matriculate into those programs in our state gives you a moment of pause to say, do we need to make a change here? And is that a goal of athletics in Pennsylvania, is to see that, kind of pathway of our athletes moving on to compete in the collegiate level, and doing so in our own state. So I think all of those things are great arguments, and just points of reflection for, as Dustin said, the administrators, but also our legislators today. I think they really understood it. All of the senators that spoke on the floor had just such enthusiasm to recognize these girls, but also, like they were talking pin, win by fall, and to have these terms thrown out on the floor of the Senate was thrilling. So really great momentum, and a beautiful day for girls wrestling in Pennsylvania.
Well, thank you so much, Leah, for not only joining us here tonight, but all your hard work, and we can't say it enough, right? I mean, there's so many pieces, and there's so many people behind the scenes, but it's just so great that we have this movement to kind of piggyback on and say, hey, what can we do to help, and get the fans involved, and get parents involved, and get whoever's listening involved, because it's going to take a village, right? It's going to take a lot of us, and we appreciate your efforts and everything you did. And your daughter has she has big shoes to fill, not only Montana's but also yours too, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Today was a great day. Quick side story. My first job where I started my career was in that building, in that room, doing press conferences. And so having her standing by me today, and just realizing the power your voice has, not just from me, but from Montana and the other girls, is just a insurmountable gift that I'm proud that she was able to receive.
Well, I think she's going to look back on this and say, wow, I can't believe this is what, transpired here today. And it's funny how it all comes full circle for you, Leah. And again, we appreciate everything that you've done for Pennsylvania wrestling, girls wrestling, the Sanctioned PA movement. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Dustin, for your great coverage, and hope to be back again.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Leah.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Leah.
I thought it was so cool, Dustin, to hear her talk about like the cookies, right? And like, that takes time, right? It's like, I think of when you go to like a party and you're like, yeah, you just grab like a veggie tray, or you just, because it's easy, right? Somebody actually baked cookies in the form of singlets, color coded towards that's a process. I mean, my wife bakes. I see it happen. Like, it's an all day affair. That's cool. Those little nuggets right there, or cookies, should I say, are really cool to find.
The level of detail behind the scenes with this thing, and how on point they all need to be, because this is an uphill fight that all of them are fighting. I did eat one of those singlet cookies on the way home, and it was delicious too. It was a 2-bite. I went down to the waist and then I finished it off.
That was it. That was all she wrote, right? No wonder Bruce could crush you. He like takes a handful of cookies and it's like, like Yeah, I've stood next to him at a wrestlers in business conference one time, and I was like, oh boy, you're a big guy, and yeah, it's just so cool to see. And Leah, I love talking to her about, I love busting her chops about Cumberland Valley. But she's so great for the movement, as is everybody involved in it. So, and she did bring up that we are. Everyone knows we do the state medal shirts. I think it's 6 or 7 years straight. We've done the state medal shirts for the boys. State champions, state medalists all receive shirts. It's quite a large task to try to get a list of addresses, because at first we had to send them to schools, then we sent them to wrestlers. It's kind of a mess, and you're talking about 400 plus wrestlers, 8 now down to 13 weight classes. But with the girls, Lily said we have to have girls shirts for the state medal. So I'm like, you're right. Why are we not doing that? So Lily was a driving force behind that. So I'll put up a screenshot here of the shirts that you can see. So it's PA Power Wrestling in the middle. It says Girl Power. That's on the front, and I'll put that up a little bit bigger here. PA Power Wrestling with the Girl Power with the pink medal hanging down here. Lily's colors for the Girl Power are green and pink, which are very fitting. But the cool thing is the back of the shirts look just like the boys do. So if you're walking by and you see like a guy shirt wearing a state medalist or state champion shirt, and then a girl wearing it, and it's going to look the exact same. The only thing different is that front. So I thought that was important to show, like, this isn't just, you are just as good, right? So yeah, it's just something, a small gesture that we can do for the girls that work so hard to compete, and it's just quite exhilarating and exciting to see things like today happen, Dustin. I'm jealous you got to be there firsthand to eat, not only eat cookies, but hang out and rub shoulders with Bruce Baumgartner.
It wasn't, that man has massive shoulders, so it wasn't much of a rub. His shoulders got the winning end of that one for sure. If you fast forward to the girls' state tournament next year, you are going to see those girl power shirts all over the place, and it is going to mean more. And not that you see them all the time. You see the state medalist shirts all the time in duels, early season, all the time. You're going to see a sea of these things. For whoever's coming back, they're going to wear that thing with a lot of pride, because it is a small thing that is actually not a small thing at all in their eyes.
Right. No, it's super cool, and we're happy to help, right? Kind of switching gears, Dustin. We had, and I know you're stuck in middle Pennsylvania here. I mean, we call it South Central. Even geographically speaking, it's not South Central at all, but we call it that. You're stuck there in Harrisburg, so I don't know if you got to venture out to see everything else going on in the state of Pennsylvania. But a young man by the name of Bo Bassett and Pearson Manville, both are wrestlers from Pennsylvania. Bo Bassett and Pearson Manville are both at the Cadet Pan Am Championships in Mexico this weekend, and they competed in freestyle today. Both of them just destroyed the competition and came away with gold medals there. And it's interesting because we talk about, Bo traveled however many miles to get to Mexico to go to Pan Am Championships. He wins by tech fall 10-0 in both matches. I don't think either one made it to the second period. And you're like, man, that's a long hike for that. Is it worth it? But I think it is, right? And you had mentioned something to me before the show about, just going through those steps, because he's now preparing for Hungary for the World Championships. He's now been in a UWW event now, right? He's traveled. He's had to do the weigh-ins. He knows the process. Just getting kind of familiar with that process, I think, will help, even though he just completely dominated, as did all the other Americans that competed.
Yeah, and I think those steps are so huge when it comes to getting your flight, arriving, getting your sleep and eating schedule, understanding what time you have to be there, going through those steps, and just understanding the ins and the outs of international competition. Not that, you would love to be challenged, and certainly getting to wrestle, different people with different styles, from different backgrounds. You'll get a brand new feel for somebody, even though you tech them, before the second period, whatever. There are a lot of benefits, I would imagine, to going through all these steps, and he'll be able to visualize what he went through when it comes to all the travel logistics and stuff, being able to get his rest right and manage his weight in a new location and new food, like all that stuff. I think it's a really good dry run, even though it didn't look like much of a competition at all.
And it's interesting you say it that way, because in talking to Spencer Lee, and he's been on obviously a number of world teams, but one of the things he said after his 8th grade year going out there, and I forget where the first one was, it may have been in South America, the World Championships, and he said, just being there on the mats are different, the wrestlers are different. It's not like wrestling Gus Sullivan in the room. It's like I'm wrestling a guy from Kyrgyzstan or Azerbaijan, and they're completely different styles. And Bo, I think, being he's only a 7th grader, he's I mean, man, the future's bright for him. But we don't want to discount Pearson Manville. It's in his blood too. His brothers have done well and been on world teams, so this is kind of a family rite of passage for him to compete at that high level here at the Pan Am Championships.
This maybe neither here nor there. My impression of Bo Bassett from afar, not knowing the kid too much and not really even knowing style wise, but clearly a polished, technical, advanced, talented. All the ingredients are there. But to me, it strikes me as the number one asset for him is his attitude and just a mature wrestling approach. Like, he is not going to get that shaken. It looks like he's equipped to deal with failure if or when that ever comes. And you have to be able to get there. I think of Mason Gibson, for example.
Yeah.
Getting beat the way that he got beat by Brett Unger and the stun, being stunned like that. You have to be equipped to handle that, not just within the same tournament, but in the mindset of your career. If you go into, and certainly Bo Bassett will feel this way, if you go into, I know it's a couple years off, but go into your first state tournament, for example, aspiring and expecting to be a 4-time champ, what happens if things go sideways?
Right.
He just strikes me as a kid who, if something like that happens, whether that's at the high school level or at the collegiate level or whatever, he just looks like he's in the frame of mind that he can handle that part of the sport.
Yeah, the one, we've been fortunate to host Bo in a couple of different art tournaments, one being True Power against Nathan Desmond, the other one at the Redemption Duel. And really, we saw him at True Power against Nathan Desmond, and, he got turned in that match. Nathan Desmond was on him, right? And Bo didn't look like, he didn't look flustered at all. He just stayed to what he wanted to do and continued doing the things that worked for him. And it's interesting you bring up Mason Gibson, because Mason Gibson is going to be a better wrestler because of what happened in that state final. So you're right, the level of maturity for Bo, that kind of tenacity, that mental edge that he has is I think very mature for his age. And I think, like you said, it's going to pay dividends down the road. It's not when, if, or it's not if, it's when, he does take some adversity, right? Because everyone does it, right? It doesn't matter whether that's not getting a tech fall when you want one, or if it's getting pinned in the state finals. It could happen. It will happen at some point.
And speaking of adversity, how about Pearson Manville? Pearson and Carson Manville, two of the craziest postseason things. For Pearson to lose in the true second and not reach the super regional is stunning to me.
Yeah.
It's a talented kid who I would fully expect 3 high finishes the rest of the way. He was a victim of the weirdness of the postseason. That's just one situation. That true second match is so unnatural. And when you're on the losing end and you're reeling a little bit, and you have to in some of these situations, the gym empties, or it was already emptied in the first place, that you're getting your mandatory 45 minutes. There's nobody else around. You're just pacing and waiting for your time to be up. Like, it is a weird situation to try to come back from. And he was a victim of that. And Carson, with his deal with Brooks Gable and Altoona, and being DQ'd and not being able to get to Hershey at all. But Pearson, really bright future. And I suspect, is he even more advanced in a freestyle and Greco side of things than he is in folk style?
Yeah, for sure. And, the Manvilles are just, Mason being more of a Greco guy, and, both, all 3 of them are just, very, very savvy. I can remember watching Carson. Eric and I were out in Fargo and watching Carson just completely annihilate guys like without any problem. And it's just like you said, it's maybe their kind of bread and butter. So yeah, no surprise at all from Pearson. And he's at a weight where Levi Haynes, is at for the world team. So it's two club members, M2 club members. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun to see at the world championships. Well, Dustin, that's the alarm. You can't hear it, but the alarm is going off. That's been an hour. It's called the Power Hour for a reason. We only talked for an hour. All right. We didn't think we could make it an hour. We did. Dustin, I don't know, man. Eric's got some competition. Not only do you have hair, but we made an hour seem like 20 minutes. How was your first Power Hour? Was it okay?
It was great. I didn't feel all that powerful, but I think we did survive the hour. I could go another one in some way or another. And I would say, just caution Eric, maybe don't go to Hungary, because this could be a Wally Pipp situation. You leave your post, and I'm going to come in and occupy it.
Wow. Shots fired, as we usually like to call in my profession. So yeah, that's you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, Dustin, well, I appreciate you being there and covering the event today, but also coming in tonight to spend some time talking with me and Leah about everything that transpired today. So, we appreciate all your hard work, and we look forward to hopefully working with you again real soon. Okay.
I appreciate your hard work, and it was a thrill to be here, as always.
Absolutely. Well, you know it, fans. That's the end of the Power Hour, and stay tuned for next week. In fact, Eric and I may do a kind of special show to talk about Bo Bassett, so stay tuned on that. Follow us on Twitter at PA Power Wrestle, PA Power Wrestling on Facebook, Instagram, and also our channel on Rockfin at PA Power Wrestling. As always, wrestling fans, keep it classy, and we'll see you real soon.